Every single day, millions of people stand at their kitchen counters, peel potatoes, and drop those skins into the trash without a second thought. It takes maybe 30 seconds. It feels like nothing, just kitchen waste, right? But somewhere out there, an old farmer is quietly smiling because he knows something you don't. Picture this. Two gardens sit side by side, same soil, same seeds, same rainfall, same amount of sunlight touching both plots every single morning. But one garden is struggling, pale leaves, thin stems, fruit that never quite reaches its potential. The other garden is extraordinary, deep green, bursting, almost unfairly alive. The difference is not an expensive fertilizer. It is not a rare technique from a horticultural university. The difference is something the second gardener pulls straight from his kitchen bin 3 times a week, something brown, thin, and completely overlooked by the modern world. For generations, certain gardeners have known a secret that never made it into mainstream gardening culture. It was never bottled and sold on a shelf. It was never featured in a glossy magazine. It was passed quietly from grandparent to grandchild, whispered between farmers at early morning markets, practiced in the backs of kitchen gardens where nobody thought to look closely enough to see. And the reason it stayed hidden is almost more fascinating than the secret itself. Because when something costs nothing, the world has a strange habit of deciding it must be worth nothing. We live in an age where gardening advice comes packaged in plastic bottles with scientific-sounding names and premium price tags. We have been trained to trust complexity. We've been taught that results require investment, that growth requires products, that a flourishing garden is something you purchase rather than something you nurture with what you already have. But the earth does not read product labels. It does not care about branding. It responds to what it is fed, and it has been responding to this particular secret for thousands of years. What you are about to discover has been sitting in your kitchen this entire time. It has been going into landfills by the millions of tons every single year, while gardeners spend billions of dollars trying to replicate exactly what it naturally contains. By the time this story is finished, you will not just know the secret, you will understand why it works, where it came from, who has been using it quietly for centuries, and exactly how to bring it into your own garden starting today. Stay with me from beginning to end, because every chapter of this builds on the last, and the final revelation is the one that will genuinely change the way you garden forever. The secret starts with something most people throw away before breakfast. Before we talk about what potato peels do for your garden, we need to talk about what is actually inside them, because once you understand the chemistry, the magic stops feeling like magic and starts feeling like something obvious that should have been taught in every gardening class ever written. The potato peel is not just a wrapper. It is not decorative packaging that the plant uses to hold itself together. It is a concentrated layer of survival, everything the potato plant deposited into its outermost skin to protect itself, regulate moisture, and store energy. Let's start with potassium. Potato peels contain extraordinarily high levels of potassium, one of the 3 essential macronutrients that every plant on Earth requires to survive. Potassium is the mineral that controls water regulation inside plant cells. It's the nutrient responsible for strong stem development, deep root architecture, and the triggering of flowering and fruiting cycles. When your soil is potassium deficient, your plants show it immediately: yellowing leaf edges, weak growth, fruit that forms small and drops early. Commercial potassium fertilizers are one of the best-selling garden products in the world. People spend enormous amounts of money on them every season, and the entire time, potato peels, which are richer in potassium than almost any kitchen scrap that exists, are going straight into the bin. But potassium is only the beginning. Potato peels also carry significant levels of iron, the mineral that plants use to produce chlorophyll, the green pigment responsible for photosynthesis. Without adequate iron, leaves turn yellow between their veins in a condition called chlorosis. Plants stop converting sunlight efficiently, growth slows, vitality fades. Iron supplements for plants exist as a specific product category precisely because so many gardens are quietly iron deficient and nobody connects that deficiency to the peels they've been discarding every week. Then there's calcium. Calcium is the mineral that builds cell walls, giving plants structural integrity and resistance to disease. It's the reason well-nourished plants can stand upright against wind and recover quickly from stress. Calcium-deficient soil produces brittle, vulnerable plants, the kind that snap in a light storm and succumb to fungal infections after a single wet week. Potato peels carry calcium naturally, without processing, without synthetic formulation. They also contain vitamin B6, which plays a role in plant metabolism and stress response. They carry dietary fiber that breaks down in soil and feeds the microbial communities underground, the invisible ecosystem of bacteria and fungi that make nutrient absorption possible for your plants in the first place. Your soil is a living thing. It breathes, it digests, it hosts billions of microorganisms that work in invisible collaboration to convert organic matter into the molecular nutrients plant roots can actually absorb. Potato peels feed that underground community directly. What you have been throwing away is not waste. It's a complete, natural, slow-release soil amendment that your garden has been quietly waiting for. To truly understand why the secret is so powerful, you have to travel back. Not to a laboratory, not to a university research paper. You have to travel to the highlands of Peru, where the potato was born. The Andes Mountains of South America are where humanity first cultivated the potato more than 8,000 years ago. The Quechua-speaking peoples of that region didn't just grow potatoes, they built an entire civilization around them. They developed over 3,000 distinct potato varieties. They understood the soil in a way that modern agriculture is only beginning to rediscover. And they buried the skins. Not out of habit, not by accident, Andean farmers observed across generations that plots where organic potato matter was returned to the earth consistently outperformed those where it was not. They didn't have the language of potassium and calcium and microbial biology, but they had something more powerful, centuries of careful, patient observation passed down through oral tradition and living practice. They called it returning the gift. The earth gave you the potato, you gave the skin back, and the relationship continued. This philosophy of reciprocal farming, taking from the earth and consciously returning it to it, was not unique to the Andes. Across the Atlantic, in the rural west of Ireland during the great era of potato farming in the 18th and 19th centuries, smallholder families practiced what they called lazy bed cultivation. In these raised growing mounds, kitchen scraps, including potato peels, were layered directly into the soil between plantings. Families who had almost nothing discovered that their kitchen waste, properly returned to the ground, could dramatically improve yields from one season to the next. Then came the wars. During both World War I and World War II, European civilians facing severe food rationing were encouraged by their governments to grow their own food in victory gardens. Resources were scarce. Commercial fertilizers were redirected toward agricultural production, and ordinary families, growing vegetables in their backyards and window boxes and communal lots, turned to what they had: kitchen scraps, peelings, organic waste, and quietly composted everything back into the soil. Records from that period show some of the most productive small-scale home gardens in modern European history, not because of expertise, not because of products, because necessity forced people to stop wasting what the earth had already given them. That knowledge should have entered mainstream gardening permanently. It should have been written into textbooks and passed through gardening culture the way pruning techniques and watering schedules were. But it was not, because you cannot sell it. You cannot patent a potato peel. You cannot build a brand around kitchen scraps. And so the market moved on, and the secret stayed where it had always lived, in the hands of people who were paying attention. Those people still exist, and now so do you. Knowing the history is powerful. Understanding the science builds conviction. But what every gardener really wants is to walk outside tomorrow and do something different. So let us get practical, because this is where the secret becomes yours completely. There are 4 distinct methods for using potato peels in your garden, and each one serves a different purpose depending on what your soil needs and how patient you're willing to be. The first method is direct burial. Take your fresh potato peels and bury them 4 to 6 inches beneath the surface of your soil, close to the root zones of your existing plants, or directly in the rows where you plan to plant. As the peels decompose underground, they release their nutrients slowly and steadily, a natural slow-release fertilizer that commercial products spend enormous engineering effort trying to replicate. This method is quiet and invisible, but over several weeks, the results appear above ground in the form of darker leaves, stronger stems, and noticeably accelerated growth. The second method is peel-infused water, and this one moves faster. Take a generous handful of potato peels, drop them into a pot of water, and bring it to a boil. Let the peels simmer for 15 to 20 minutes, then remove them and allow the water to cool completely to room temperature. What you're left with is a pale brown liquid that is loaded with the water-soluble minerals that have leached out of the peels during boiling. Use this water on your seedlings and young plants in place of regular watering 2 to 3 times per week. Roots absorb these dissolved nutrients almost immediately. Gardeners who use this method consistently report visible changes within 10 to 14 days. The third method is dried potato powder. Spread your potato peels on a baking sheet and dry them in a low oven or leave them in the sun for several days until they are completely desiccated and brittle. Once dry, crush or blend them into a coarse powder. Work this powder into your topsoil before planting or sprinkle it around the base of established plants and water it in. Drying concentrates the minerals and extends the shelf life, so you can build up a supply during winter months and deploy it when the growing season begins. The fourth method is compost acceleration. If you already maintain a compost pile, potato peels are among the most valuable additions you can make. They're classified as green material, nitrogen-rich organic matter that accelerates decomposition and feeds the microbial activity that turns raw organic waste into finished compost. Add them regularly, balance them with brown material like dried leaves, and your compost will mature faster and carry higher nutrient density than it did before. You don't need all 4 methods. Start with one. Watch what happens. Let your garden show you what it needed all along. Something shifts in your garden. It doesn't happen dramatically or overnight. It happens the way most real things happen, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. First, you notice the soil. It begins to darken slightly, taking on that rich, almost chocolate color that experienced gardeners recognize immediately as a sign of biological activity. It becomes looser under your hands, more willing to break apart, less compacted and resistant. When you push a finger into healthy, well-fed soil, it feels almost spongy, alive in a way that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who hasn't felt it. Then the plants respond. The ones near your buried peels or fed with your peel water start to look different in a way you might struggle to articulate at first. The green deepens, not dramatically, not overnight, but in that steady, confident way that tells you something fundamental has changed in the chemistry beneath the surface. Stems thicken, leaves unfurl wider, growth that seemed stalled suddenly moves again. If you're growing vegetables, you'll notice it most at harvest time. Fruit that previously peaked at a modest size pushes a little further. Root vegetables dig deeper. Yields that felt acceptable suddenly feel generous. And there's a moment, standing in your garden with soil on your hands and more food than you expected, when you think about all those years of throwing peels away and feel something between laughter and disbelief. But here's what nobody tells you about this secret. The most important transformation is not in your garden. It's in how you see the world around you. You start looking at waste differently. Coffee grounds become a soil amendment. Eggshells become a calcium source. Vegetable cooking water becomes a mineral supplement. Your kitchen stops being a place where resources disappear and starts being a place where resources are made. The boundary between inside your home and outside in your garden begins to dissolve in a way that feels ancient and correct. This is how humans gardened for most of human history, not extracting from the earth while discarding everything the earth could use, but cycling, returning, maintaining a conversation with the soil that stretched across seasons and generations. The old farmers who knew this secret weren't hoarding it out of selfishness. They were simply living it so naturally that it never occurred to them it needed to be explained. It was just what you did. You cooked, you peeled, you returned. The secret was never really hidden. It was just waiting for someone to stop moving fast enough to notice it. You have noticed it now. And tomorrow morning, when you stand at your kitchen counter and reach for that potato, you'll peel it differently. You'll hold the skin in your hand for just a moment longer, and then you'll walk outside and you'll give something back.